James Clear is our guest on today's podcast. I don't know why the hell we've been having guests on our podcast lately. I guess we finally scraped the bottom of the barrel of what Ryan is good for. And it of course has nothing to do with me running out of material.
Of course.
But so we've got James Clear on, and James Clear is somebody that a lot of our listeners and our posse members probably don't know about. So, James, I'm going to put you on the spot and just kind of let you introduce yourself, if you don't mind.
I have had a lot of different touch points with health and wellness. And so I guess the three main areas that I sort of box myself into now are, one, writing about behavior change and habit formation and how we can use those principles to lead a healthier life. And then secondly is as like a practitioner. I think research is important, but I also think it's important to sort of carry the banner and like live a healthy life yourself. And then the third thing is I feel like there are a lot of things that affect and impact our health that we wouldn't normally term like health decisions. The type of work you do, the amount of creativity you express in your life, how well your relationships are, and the people that you connect with on a daily basis. I think that all those things manifest themselves in our physical health in some way.
You had no way of knowing this, James, but when you actually contacted us about being on the podcast, it was like the most perfect timing of anything that's pretty much ever happened. Because you mentioned that you wanted to talk about habits, and we were just planning to release a course on making a daily exercise, a daily movement exploration habit, which is just kind of like, taking the idea of sort of taking the sets and reps out of things, but just having fun with something for, 5, 10, 15 minutes a day that gets you to move creatively and move towards being able to build a habit that is more expressive rather than just, today I have to do like, 5 intervals or whatever.
Yeah. I love that idea of exploration, just doing things for fun as well. I think that's so critical. Logically it makes sense to anybody who thinks about it, right? Like, sure, you want to enjoy the processes that you do. And when you feel like you're forced to do something, it's not as inspiring or motivating or enjoyable. But just taking that approach of making sure that you set aside time to be creative or to explore, and making sure that it's something that you daily do, that you do typically and on a consistent basis, and not something that you just do whenever you feel like it. I think that the cumulative impact of forcing yourself to explore on a consistent basis is huge.
So rather than think about, I should work out this day or whatnot, it's not a matter of what really you're doing, but actually going in there and making an effort to do it. And this is something as far as me with the one-arm handstand, there are days when it's tough for me to really get in there and want to do it, because I'm doing this every single day. All I do is stand on my hands, and I'm doing this up to 2, sometimes 3 times a day, different sessions. And so it can be difficult in the beginning. Of course, it's kind of fun. You're excited about it. But as that, honeymoon period, I guess, kind of starts to wane, you find that inspiration, why are you doing this? That you have to constantly think about that. And I really enjoyed reading your article on that, about the difference between professionals and amateurs. And basically what it comes down to is just getting in there and doing it. So creating the habit to just get in there and do it.
Instead of worrying about the goal or the vision you had at the outset, just stick to the schedule, but reduce the scope. So you can tell yourself, like, well, maybe 20 minutes isn't enough time to get changed and run 3 miles, but it is enough time to get changed and run 5 sprints, right? And the individual impact of sticking to your goal in a smaller way of reducing the scope, not that big. But the cumulative impact of always sticking to the schedule and never missing workouts, that's huge, because you can tell yourself internally, the situation wasn't ideal, the circumstances weren't the best, but I still found a way to make it work. And if you can prove that to yourself over and over again, then you'll develop the willpower and the motivation, or, the fortitude to always stick to that schedule. And then you're going to make huge gains.
Yeah, totally. And another thing that's really interesting that James said is that we tend to focus on the result, but just scheduling the work actually, in a lot of ways, can be so much more powerful for getting that result. A lot of the cognitive research on like high performance and habit and that kind of thing, they do on musicians. I don't know why. It's probably just because everybody loves a little funk. But the thing is, they study musicians and elite musicians and virtuoso musicians, and most people who are great musicians don't start out thinking, I want to learn how to play X song, right? They start out by setting aside a certain amount of time each day that they're just going to practice their instrument, and over time they can play all the damn songs, but they're not working on one song. They're just setting aside that time. They schedule, 1 hour a day or 2 1-hour sessions, or, depending on their thing, they schedule that time and set it aside, and that's just their practice time. And they do it whether they feel like it or not. They might have a good session, they might have a lousy session, but the elite musicians are always the ones who follow a very disciplined routine, rather than just chasing goals. It's not always about just like being fired up about a goal all the time.
So I think there are two things that we can look at, and then we can apply them to pretty much any situation in our life, not just health stuff. The first is a concept that I call identity-based habits. And the idea is a lot of times when we pick a goal, we put the result or the performance or our appearance first, right? We put I want to lose 40 pounds in 12 weeks, or I want to increase my squat by 100 pounds in the next 16 weeks, or whatever it is, right? We pick some lofty goal that we're driving towards. And I think goals are great if you already are the type of person who can achieve them. And what I mean by that is that it comes down to the identity or the type of person that you believe that you are. If you're sitting on the couch right now and aren't in the consistent habit of working out, where you've only worked out maybe once in the last 3 weeks, or 3 times in the last 2 months, then internally it's hard to believe that you're the type of person that can make those significant changes. And so I think that the goal should be to form the identity first and then move on to the goals or the results later. And so for the example of someone who wants to lose weight, it could be, the identity that you want to build is become the type of person who never misses workouts. You become that type of person, then you can be the type of person who loses 40 pounds in, 12 weeks or whatever. But you need to develop the habit first. And so by starting with that identity, you can start to develop the type of person that you want to become and prove it to yourself with many small wins. The second piece is what I call the 3 R's of habit change. So the first R is a reminder, and that's the trigger or the cue that causes you to do the behavior. The second R is the routine. That's the actual habit, what you're actually doing, the action. And the third R is the reward, and that's the benefit for doing it. Another thing that I think you guys might enjoy about this is a concept that I call environment design. And this applies directly to this sequence. If you can optimize the things around you to make those good behaviors easier and those bad behaviors harder, how much easier would it be to live a healthy life? If you want to make good behaviors and good habits easier, then reduce the number of steps you need to take to do them, right? For example, if you want to exercise more frequently, well, if you need to get dressed and get changed and get in your car and drive to the gym, that's a lot of steps between you and working out. Yep. Whereas if you decide, I'll just do a body weight workout in my apartment, then great. There's not many steps there at all. So if you can reduce the number of steps for the good behaviors, you make them easier to do. And if you can increase the number of steps for the bad behaviors, you make them harder to do. Don't is a very psychologically empowering phrase. It's it's a choice where it's I'm that type of person. Whereas I can't is a very restrictive phrase. It's I'm not allowed to do that, or I'm on a diet that tells me I can't do it.
That's awesome. And that brings us actually back to the identity-based habits again, which is also very interesting because recently we were talking about motivation a lot. And one of the things that we wrote about was, that thing of, is it really that you want to have a 6-pack or whatever, or is it that you just want to be the kind of person who is active and healthy? And it really hits on that identity thing. And I think that that's just a great thing, that I'm not that kind of person. I'm the kind of person who chooses this is really much more empowering and much more intrinsic motivation and self-driven than external motivation and society and approval-driven, like a lot of the decisions that we tend to make.
Yeah, I love that. I would agree with you. Absolutely. I think I like how you guys framed that as well for your audience. I think that's really useful. There's this idea called a keystone habit. And a keystone habit is one good behavior or the type of thing that you do each day that just sort of naturally pulls everything else in line. For me, this is fitness and like working out. If I work out or train during a particular day, then I automatically want to eat better. It's weird. It's like, I can maybe get away with eating worse because I exercise, but I naturally want to eat better because I already exercised, and so I want to take care of my body more and give myself good nutrition. I sleep better. And so as a result, I'm more productive and more energized when I wake up in the morning, and I concentrate better. And so all of these things, I didn't focus on building a habit for concentration and for sleep and for diet. All I did was, let's focus on the one keystone habit, make sure I get my training in today, and I know the rest of the stuff will kind of fall in line. And so if you can figure out where that cascading effect comes from for you, then that can be a very powerful way to make a lot of change without actually having to worry about every little detail.
All right, nice. So James, thank you very much. It's been enlightening and entertaining, as all good conversations should be, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, when you guys are scraping the bottom of the barrel, I'm happy to be there and help out. So it's been great. Thanks for having me.
We'll have to have you on every time from now on.